My brother framed me for stealing $42,000 from our mom, turned the whole family against me, and vanished when the FBI started digging. Then he mailed me a postcard that said, "Hope you're proud. This is all your fault." I wasn't even looking for anything suspicious when I found it. That's the part that still messes with me. I was at Mom's place on a Saturday afternoon, fixing the leaky faucet in her bathroom like I always did when something broke down. Adrian had dropped by earlier, said he was checking in on Mom, which basically meant eating her cookies and using her Wi-Fi. When I came back into the kitchen to wash my hands, there it was, an old receipt, folded twice, sitting on the counter like it wanted to be noticed. Not the kind of thing Mom ever left lying around. She was obsessive about shredding things, especially anything with numbers on it. I picked it up. A cash withdrawal from one of her accounts, $4,000, dated 2 weeks ago. That alone wouldn't have raised alarms, but the handwriting scrawled in the margin did. Adrian, emergency vet. I stood there staring at it. Adrian didn't have a pet. "Hey, that's nothing," he said, suddenly behind me. I jumped. Mom wanted to help out a friend of mine. Dog had some kind of liver issue, I think. I didn't even ask. He just offered that up like he'd rehearsed it. "Huh," I said, folding the receipt again. "Weird, she didn't mention it." "She didn't want to worry you," he said, brushing it off. "You're always so intense about her money." I didn't say anything. Just pocketed the receipt when he turned away. That was the first time I noticed it, his weird habit of volunteering information no one asked for. Over the next few weeks, he brought up that vet visit again. Different versions every time. First it was his friend's dog. Then it was a stray he and Mom had taken to the clinic. Then it was a neighbor's pet. Something didn't sit right. I started checking Mom's accounts. She'd given me view-only access a year ago after a small health scare. Said she trusted me to keep an eye on things. At first, I only looked at the last 2 months. Then I expanded the search. There were irregularities. Withdrawals for large, round numbers. 3,000 here. 5,000 there. Always from the same account. Always on or right after days when Adrian visited her. I cross-referenced with my own memory Mother's Day lunch, his sudden business trip from 2 months ago, the week he forgot his wallet at our Sunday brunch. The dates lined up a little too well. The total? $42,000. Gone. No paper trail. No receipts except that one. No clear explanation. My gut twisted every time I opened that spreadsheet. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. That maybe Mom was just being generous. But the evidence was stacking up, and Adrian was starting to look less like a devoted son and more like a very skilled liar. I didn't say anything right away. But the seed had been planted. Something was wrong. And my own brother was at the center of it. It was a Sunday afternoon when Adrian called and said he wanted to have a family talk. That's the phrase he used. Not a meeting, not a discussion, a family talk. Like we were kids again, about to sit cross-legged on the carpet while our parents laid down some new rules. I had no idea what was coming, but something in his voice sounded off. Like it was all rehearsed. Polished. We met at Aunt Sarah's house in Cherry Hill, the same place we always use for birthdays and holidays. When I walked in, everyone was already there. Uncle Mike, our cousins Gabe and Lauren, even Sarah's old friend who lived down the block. It felt more like a courtroom than a living room. Adrian stood by the fireplace, hands clasped like he was about to deliver a sermon. He even gave me a tight smile when I walked in. "Thanks for coming," he said, loud enough to hush the room. "This is hard, but it's necessary." I stayed standing. My eyes scanned the room. Mom wasn't there. He waited a beat, then started talking. "I didn't want to believe it at first," he said, pulling out a manila folder. "But the numbers don't lie." He opened the folder like it was some kind of reveal on a game show. Inside were a few sheets of paper, bank statements, printed screenshots, and a couple of highlighted sections that looked very familiar. "This is from Mom's checking account," he said. "Over the past 6 months, there's been a pattern of money disappearing. Withdrawals. Transfers. Charges she didn't recognize." My heart started pounding. "And the one consistent link," Adrian said, his voice rising just slightly, "is Josiah." Every head in the room turned toward me. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked. Adrian looked almost sad, like this pained him. "Mom trusted you with access to her finances. And somehow $42,000 is just gone. You think I stole from her?" "I'm not saying that," he replied smoothly. "I'm just saying the facts speak for themselves." He handed out copies like some kind of prosecutor. And sure enough, there were the transactions I'd already seen, withdrawals I knew damn well had nothing to do with me. But Adrian had done his homework. He circled dates that lined up with times I'd visited Mom. Highlighted my name where it appeared in calendar reminders she kept. "You twisted this," I said, flipping through the papers. "This is selective. Convenient." Uncle Mike cleared his throat. "It does look bad, Josiah." Aunt Sarah didn't even look at me. She just shook her head like she was ashamed. "You know I wouldn't do this," I said, scanning the room trying to find just one pair of eyes that believed me. No one spoke. I've been tracking this, I added. The money didn't go to me. It went to what? Adrian interrupted. To someone who conveniently can't be traced? Because as far as I can tell, the trail ends with you. I looked at him, finally seeing it, how rehearsed it all was. The way he stood, the calm tone, the folder. He'd planned every word. He wanted this. I'm not the thief, I said quietly. Well, Adrian said, taking the folder back and closing it with a soft snap. You'll forgive us if we can't take your word for it anymore. Just like that, the room turned cold. And just like that, I was alone. After that meeting, it was like someone flipped a switch and erased me from the family. One day I was Josiah, the dependable son, the nephew who fixed broken porch lights and drove everyone home from the hospital. The next, I was the guy who stole 42 grand from his own mother. No one said it out loud, not anymore. They didn't have to. The silence did all the talking. I tried visiting Mom the following week. She was in the nursing home out in Voorhees, the one Adrian insisted we move her to when her mobility got worse. It used to be that I could show up any day with her favorite muffins and a book to read to her. But that morning, the receptionist gave me a polite smile and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Larkin. We've been asked to limit your visits. Immediate family only unless pre-approved. I just stood there, stunned. I am immediate family, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Adrian left a note. He's handling her affairs now. You'll have to speak with him. I left without saying anything else. I didn't trust myself to speak. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my truck. Back home, I sat in the quiet and stared at the receipts and screenshots I'd compiled. I had proof, well, pieces of it. But nothing solid enough to make people listen. Adrian had used just enough truth to twist everything. He knew how to make doubt look like guilt. That night I called a lawyer. A friend of a friend recommended her. She listened quietly while I laid it all out. Do you have legal authority over your mother's accounts? She asked. Not anymore, I admitted. She gave Adrian power of attorney 6 months ago. Said it was just easier since he was handling her bills. She paused. Then right now your best move is to wait. Don't confront him. Don't try to force your way in. Just document everything. Keep records. If there's fraud, it'll surface eventually. But if you act rashly, he'll use it against you. I hung up feeling more powerless than ever. Every time I checked my phone, there was nothing. No calls from Mom. No texts from Aunt Sarah, Uncle Mike, or even my cousins. They'd all picked a side. And it wasn't mine. So I started writing things down. I made a spreadsheet of every withdrawal. Logged every conversation. Took screenshots of Adrian's vague texts and disappearing voice memos. I didn't know what I was building. But I knew I'd need it someday. Because sooner or later, the truth always finds a way out. Even if no one's looking for it. About 2 months after the family meeting, I saw Adrian's car parked outside a rundown auto lot on Route 70. Not the shiny black Lexus he used to brag about. This was some dented gray sedan that looked like it had seen better days. I slowed down just enough to catch a glimpse of him talking to a guy in overalls, gesturing toward the car like he was trying to negotiate. That didn't line up with the image Adrian always tried to project. Mr. Real Estate, Mr. Country Club. He once called my Toyota depressingly practical. Now here he was, haggling over something that didn't even have hubcaps. I didn't say anything to anyone. Just made a mental note and kept watching. A week later I ran into Miles, Adrian's son, at the grocery store. He was standing in front of the frozen pizzas, scrolling through his phone, and looking like he hadn't slept in a week. I hadn't seen him since the accusation drama, and I almost kept walking. But then he noticed me. He didn't say, "Hey, Uncle Josiah." He didn't smile. He just muttered, "So, guess you're still the villain, huh?" I shrugged. "Seems like it." He paused. "Dad's been stressed. Business stuff. Money's tight." That was all he said before walking off. But it was more than anyone else in the family had given me in months. Back in the parking lot, I sat in my truck and just stared through the windshield. Something was shifting. Not fast, but it was happening. I started seeing more signs. Adrian stopped posting those smug photos of poolside lunches and business seminars. His once busy social media pages went quiet. At family functions, which I wasn't invited to but heard about through neighbors, he started showing up alone. I heard whispers from mutual acquaintances. One guy said Adrian missed 2 mortgage payments on a rental property. Another mentioned that he backed out of a major real estate deal last minute, something about liquidity issues. It was all small stuff, but together it painted a picture. The mask was slipping. And still no one asked me what I knew. No one apologized. But I wasn't waiting for them anymore. I was watching, taking notes, connecting dots. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity, truth, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to set things right again. One crack at a time. Aurora was the first person who really believed me. Not just nodded along politely, but sat across from me at my kitchen table with a notepad and that sharp, focused look she always got when something didn't sit right. Start from the beginning, she said, flipping open her laptop. Don't leave anything out. Aurora wasn't just my girlfriend, she was a financial investigator. She worked for a mid-sized firm in Philly that specialized in corporate fraud and asset tracing. I never thought I'd be bringing my own brother's name to her desk, but that's where things had landed. I handed her a folder, my own version of Adrian's theatrics from the family meeting. It had bank printouts, screenshots, and a list of every withdrawal I'd tracked from Mom's accounts since January. She read in silence, her fingers tapping against the table. Finally, she looked up. Has he filed anything in your mom's name recently? Insurance? Property transfers? I don't know. Maybe? Why? She turned the screen toward me. Because this pattern here, cash withdrawals followed by unexplained gifts or covering for a friend, that's textbook behavior for someone funneling money. Either for debt, or for something worse. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like laundering? Or gambling? Or both? That was when it all started clicking. Aurora dug deeper. She ran searches through public business records, licensing databases, and property deeds. Turns out, Adrian had quietly started a new LLC 6 months ago, Linden Bay Properties. The only listed address was a P.O. box in Camden. No employees. No real listings. Just a shell. What's he doing with it? I asked. Probably cycling money through fake transactions. Buying from himself. Selling to no one. 2 days later, Aurora walked into my place holding a manila envelope. I got something. Inside were printouts, screenshots of online poker accounts, withdrawal histories, transaction logs. One account had Adrian's real name, the other was under a weak alias, A_DReal88. But the bank routing numbers matched. He's gambling, she said. Hard. I sat back in my chair stunned. I wasn't even sure what hit me harder, the fact that he was doing it, or the fact that he was so damn sloppy. That night, I got a message from Miles. It was just a photo. A blurry shot of Adrian's laptop, tilted to the side, with a tab open to an online gambling forum. Beneath it was a spreadsheet labeled LB Monthly Liquids Adjusted. No words. No explanation. I called him. Why are you sending me this? He hesitated. Because I think you're right. And because I don't want to end up like him. That cracked something in me. A small piece of hope I'd buried months ago started to stir. Aurora and I spent the next week piecing it all together. We mapped out accounts, linked transfers to property records, tracked spikes in gambling activity around Mom's withdrawals. Every dot we connected made Adrian look less like a successful businessman and more like a man one mistake away from collapse. I finally had something more than suspicions. I had proof. And for the first time in a long while, the scales started to shift in my direction. I waited until I had everything: printouts, transaction logs, gambling site history, business registration details, neatly compiled in a binder before I reached out to Lily. She was Adrian's wife. Or more accurately, the woman who spent most of her marriage looking the other way. I never blamed her for it. Adrian had a way of making you feel crazy for asking questions. Still, I wasn't sure how she'd take it. We met at a quiet cafe in Collingswood, the kind of place where no one knew us and no one cared to listen in. She showed up with sunglasses on, hair pulled into a loose bun, intention in every step. I don't know why I'm here, she said as she sat across from me. Because you need to see this, I said, sliding the binder across the table. She didn't reach for it at first. Just stared at it like she was afraid of what it might say. Then slowly she opened the cover. I watched her face shift, confusion, disbelief, and then that awful, sinking recognition. That's his email, she whispered, pointing to one of the screenshots. I nodded. And that's his login history for the gambling site. That spreadsheet underneath? It's how he's been laundering money through his fake real estate company. Her eyes scanned the pages. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just sat there, taking it in like someone who'd suspected something for a long time but never had the courage to say it out loud. How long? She asked, voice flat. 6 months. At least. She flipped to the bank statements I'd highlighted. This money, this is from your mom's account? Most of it. Some of it came from other people. Clients. Fake investors. It's a mess, Lily. She closed the binder and leaned back in her chair, staring past me at the wall. I thought he was just stressed. He'd been short-tempered, sleeping less, leaving in the middle of the night to check on a listing. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I let the silence sit for a second before I said, I'm not showing you this to destroy him. I'm showing you this because you and the kids deserve better. And they're going to get caught in the fallout. She finally looked at me. What do you want me to do? Confront him. Let the family see it. Let them see everything. You're the only one who can. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, he won't recover from this. No, I said. But neither will Miles or Ava if this keeps going. That night, Lily called a family dinner. Everyone showed up. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Mike, the cousins, even Mom. Adrian was late, of course. When he walked in, he looked around, confused by the tension. What's going on? He asked. Lily stood up and dropped the binder on the table. Tell them, Adrian. Or I will. He laughed. What is this, some kind of intervention? No, she said. It's the end. And then she opened the binder and started reading aloud. The room cracked open like glass under pressure. And finally, everyone saw the truth. It didn't take long after Lily's confrontation for Adrian's world to come apart. Within a week, the firm he worked for suspended him. 2 days later, his license to operate as a real estate broker was under review. The state froze one of his business accounts after a complaint was filed or made sure the paperwork was airtight. I didn't even have to lift a finger. The luxury home? Gone. The bank reclaimed it once Adrian missed a third payment and failed to respond to inquiries. He tried staying with Lily for a few days, but that didn't last. She kicked him out after finding out he tried to access Miles's college savings behind her back. He ended up back at Mom's house, the same place where all of this had started. I found out from a neighbor who called to say Adrian had been seen pacing the driveway late at night, yelling into his phone and chain-smoking like his life depended on it. I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. And even though he vanished from our lives in person, he kept trying to sneak back in digitally, emails, texts, even a pathetic Facebook post where he painted himself as the real victim. I blocked him on everything. The kids took it hard. Miles didn't talk much at first. Ava cried the night her dad's stuff was thrown into storage. But Lily was strong. She told them the truth in simple terms. Their dad had made some very bad choices and now it was time to focus on building something better. That's where I came in. It started small, picking Ava up from school when Lily worked late, taking Miles to the batting cages on weekends. I didn't try to replace Adrian. I just showed up. Consistently. Quietly. After a while, they started asking if I could stay for dinner. Then game nights. Then movie marathons. Before I knew it, Ava had drawn a crayon picture of me, Mommy, Miles, and Uncle Josiah at the beach. She handed it to me with a shy smile. You should hang this on your fridge, she said. I did. Right next to my water bill. The rest of the family slowly came around. Aunt Sarah was the first to call and apologize. She cried on the phone, said she felt like a fool for believing Adrian. Uncle Mike sent me a text that just said, you were right. I'm sorry. Even Mom came around. She didn't say much, but she asked if I could help her go through her bank statements. I sat beside her at the kitchen table, neither of us talking much. But for the first time in a long time, it was intense. It was just peaceful. They started seeing me not as the black sheep or the overreacting brother, but the one who stayed standing when everything else collapsed. And while Adrian drifted into the shadows of his own mess, I stayed. I helped. I healed. Because that's what family is supposed to do. I thought I'd seen the worst of it. Thought the family reckoning, the job loss, the ruined house, thought all of that was rock bottom for Adrian. But rock bottom has layers. It was Aurora who found the final piece. She came into the apartment one night with a USB drive in her hand and a look on her face I hadn't seen before. Not shock. Not concern. Resolve. You need to see this, she said, plugging the drive into my laptop. I pulled it from the cloud account linked to one of Adrian's shell companies. He didn't even bother encrypting it. On the screen were folders, dozens of them. Names like Investor Logs, LB Holdings, Projections Q4, and, chillingly, Private_T. Inside were transaction chains, payouts, and invoices for property consultations that didn't exist. The same properties listed under multiple names. Funds moved from one account to another and finally back to Adrian's personal checking. This isn't just fraud, she said quietly. It's laundering. The gambling, the fake business, it was all cover. A spreadsheet confirmed it. Dozens of names. Small-time investors. Some legitimate. Some not. One of the payments was from a company flagged in a recent federal investigation. That's when I knew this was bigger than family drama. This was criminal. And still, a part of me hesitated. He's still my brother, I muttered. Aurora didn't flinch. Yeah. And he used your mother's savings to buy poker chips and cover payments from guys who don't leave paper trails. You don't owe him anything. So I did the only thing that made sense. I made copies of everything. Burned it onto 3 separate drives. One went to a secure mailbox labeled anonymously and addressed to the regional FBI office in Philly. The second? I dropped that one off with a former client of Aurora's, someone who used to work in cybercrime, now in private security. The third? Well, that one I slipped into a padded envelope with no return address and left it in the mailbox of one of Adrian's business partners, a man whose name came up more than once in the more suspicious files. 2 days later, Adrian disappeared. Not dramatically. No burning bridges, no goodbye notes. Just vanished. His phone disconnected. His social accounts wiped. No one had heard from him. Even Mom said, "I think he's gone," like she couldn't quite believe it either. Then the news hit. An investigation into Linden Bay properties. Possible money laundering and investor fraud. No suspects named yet, but the press release mentioned a regional network of false entities and compromised funds. Miles showed me the article on his phone. He really did all that? I nodded slowly. Yeah, he really did. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt done. The final twist wasn't that Adrian was a criminal. It was that he'd been one the whole time. And I'd just taken too long to see it. But now the truth was out. And justice, real justice, was finally on its way. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. But for the first time in years, the family wasn't tiptoeing around the truth anymore. We were facing it head-on, messy, painful, awkward, and somehow that made all the difference. Miles and Ava started settling into the new rhythm. There were still hard days, of course. Nights when Ava would cry about missing her dad, or when Miles would shut down after hearing a news update about the investigation. But the panic was gone. They weren't waiting for the next storm. Because now they had a lighthouse. I drove them to school in the mornings when Lily picked up extra shifts. Took them to the park on Saturdays. Taught Miles how to grill burgers and Ava how to ride a bike without training wheels. They stopped calling me Uncle Josiah after a while, just Josiah. Like my name alone meant something safe. Lily and I grew closer, too, not in some romantic soap opera kind of way. Just real. There were late-night talks at her kitchen table, coffee refills while the kids slept, tired laughs over how insane the last year had been. "You really saved us," she said one night quietly. I didn't know how bad it was until I saw it all laid out. "I feel stupid." "You weren't stupid," I told her. "You were trying to believe in someone you loved. That's not a flaw." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Still, I should have seen it sooner. I wanted to tell her I'd felt the same way for years. That the hardest part of this whole thing wasn't discovering who Adrian really was, it was realizing how long I'd ignored the signs. Meanwhile, Aurora and we were solid. Stronger than ever. There was something about building something real together, digging through the worst parts of my family's secrets and still finding each other on the other side, that made everything else feel unshakable. We started talking about moving in together. About maybe finding a place with a little more room. A backyard. Space for 2 kids to visit on the weekends and stay as long as they wanted. The family? They kept showing up in small ways. Aunt Sarah started inviting me to Sunday dinners again, only now she actually listened when I spoke. Uncle Mike stopped treating me like the black sheep and more like the guy who had the guts to pull the fire alarm before the house burned down. Even Mom changed. Subtle things. She'd ask how the kids were doing. Asked if I needed help fixing up the porch swing. She never said the words I wanted to hear. "I'm sorry I believed him over you," but the way she brewed a second cup of tea and left it out for me, that said enough. I wasn't trying to replace Adrian. Wasn't trying to erase the past. I was just showing up. Every day. The way he never did. And somehow, without anyone planning it, I became the person they could count on. The way family should be. The postcard showed up on a Tuesday. No return address. Just a photo of the Grand Canyon on the front and one sentence scribbled on the back in messy, angry handwriting. "Hope you're proud, this is all your fault." No name. No signature. But I didn't need one. It was Adrian. I stared at it for a minute, then flipped it back over and laid it on the counter. There was something almost pathetic about it. After everything, after the accusations, the lies, the stolen money, the shattered trust, that was what he had left. A last little jab. Aurora walked in from the hallway, coffee in one hand. "What's that?" I held it up. A ghost from the past. She raised an eyebrow, took it, and read it. "Wow. Classy." I laughed a little. Not because it was funny, but because it didn't hurt anymore. "I thought I'd feel something," I said. Anger, sadness, maybe guilt. But honestly, I just feel done. And I meant it. We didn't hear anything else from Adrian. As far as we knew, he was still on the run, dodging the FBI, burned bridges trailing behind him like smoke. His name had popped up in another article a few weeks back. Local businessman implicated in multi-state fraud network. No photo. Just speculation. Miles saw it first. He didn't say much, just passed me the phone and quietly walked out of the room. That was how things were now. The kids processed things in their own time. But they weren't doing it alone anymore. I was there. Every step of the way. I picked Ava up from school that Friday and took her to get ice cream, just the 2 of us. She sat across from me at the picnic table, her chin stained pink from bubblegum flavor, and said, "I like it better when you pick me up." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Yeah. You don't yell at the traffic." At home, Miles and I had started building a treehouse together in Lily's backyard. Nothing fancy, just some wood, nails, and trial and error, but it was ours. His idea. My hands. And Lily? She was doing okay. Stronger every day. Still tired, still figuring things out, but smiling more. Laughing again. Aurora and I signed a lease on a place 10 minutes from Lily's. Big kitchen, 2 extra bedrooms, and a backyard big enough for a grill and a garden. We weren't rushing anything, but we were planning. For real. The family that once treated me like an outsider had started calling me first when something broke, when someone needed a ride, or when they just wanted someone to listen. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just finally had the space to be myself. The man I always was. The man no one saw until everything fell apart. I looked down at Adrian's postcard one last time. Then I walked it outside, dropped it in the trash, and closed the lid. I didn't keep it. Because the past didn't own me anymore. And the future? It was finally mine.